Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Murder in Retrograde. We've missed you so much. We've had life going on, and we're back. We're here and happy to be podcasting and not mothering. Am I right?
So true. Oh, man.
Few things are as blissful as driving away from school some days after drop off.
Or it's not even the drive. It's like when you get home and it's like quiet and like nothing's really happening. And like, oh my gosh.
See, I don't know what that's like because my husband is always at home.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's
but
like the
he just went
moment.
somewhere, and so it's blissful right now.
So nice. I love it.
So we have a lot to talk about, a lot to cover. We hope that people are enjoying our new format of trying to cover some true crime, some pop culture, some legal updates, things like that. And then, of course, what to watch, because I feel like that's our full-time job next to podcasting and mothering and being a wife and being a cook and being a slave and being and yeah, all of that. So anyway, the first story is very interesting. Jenna has been doing a serious deep dive. Okay, so let's get to it. I'm Brittany Sheffrin.
I'm Jenna Kaplan.
And this is Murder in Retrograde. So Jenna, let's get started. Tell us all about Shari Papini.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So yes. So Shari Papini is from Redding, California. She's a young mom, blonde, or in 2016, she was 34, I think. So young, like little thing. And I remember when this was going on, it was all over. Like we're from California. So do you remember when this was like going on originally?
Oh, I absolutely do. And it went nationwide because of the like the Gone Girl connotation, because it was on People magazine and all of that. I was really invested in this case.
Yeah, so it's so crazy. So it's recently been in the news, but I wanted to kind of just backtrack for anyone who doesn't know the story and give you some background to this. So
sure.
A few weeks after she went missing, she was found on a side of a highway after flagging down a motorist. And in 2016, her husband, Keith Papini, had said that his 34-year-old wife was covered with bruises, burns, and was chained at the waist and at the wrist when she was found, as well as her long blonde hair was like chopped off, and she had a brand on her, I think it was her shoulder, like on her back somewhere. And she gave a description of two Hispanic women with dark hair and masks. So this is pre-pandemic too. So she was saying like they were wearing like the masks that we would be wearing right now for like COVID things, covering their faces. And she said, and although police 2 days after she was found put out a statement and they had said they had no reason not to believe her, but at that time they also had 20 warrants out for data because I think they thought maybe, but publicly they were saying like, we don't have any reason to not believe this story. And then quickly the community and online speculation began.
I kind of remember that. I remember that because it's a peculiar story to begin with. People always tend to victim blame or question victims. So I do remember being surprised, like, oh, wow, the police are like, no, we definitely believe her. Because they're immediately it came out that people were like, wait a second. So go on.
It's so funny. I mean, because online sleuths, right? They're like, So at the time, the sheriff had said the case is puzzling for a number of reasons, including motive. So there's no ransom demand and that was made, and the Papinis are of modest means. So it wasn't like this uber rich, couple that maybe someone was targeting. Her husband had wrote into Good Morning America in regard to all the online chatter. And he said, quote, rumors, assumptions, lies, and hate have been both exhausting and disgusting. In an interview he did with ABC, Keith described how Shari's weeks in captivity had stuck with her both physically and psychologically. He said, quote, when lights are off, when doors are shut, when she hears certain sounds, I mean, it's something that I don't know how to deal with and will need somebody who can help her through that from a professional standpoint. So like, not to jump the gun too much, but we now know she's being arrested for faking all of this. So I actually want your opinion on like psychologically what's going on here. Like she's allegedly concocted this whole story, but then like at home, she's still like dedicated to making it look like she's been through something. I think it's things that most people that do this kind of thing wouldn't do. Like they kind of, I would think, don't think about what that aftermath would look like, but she seems to be continuing the saga, if you will.
You're asking what I think is going on psychologically?
Yeah, like I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts? Just your thoughts on like her in general for being able to like think of this stuff
and
like
fake all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me of Jodi Arias, like that level of calculation of like the chopping of the hair. And then what did the brand say? Did it say
so they
bitch
never
or
came out and
whore?
said what it was. It was like supposedly, I think it was supposed to be like a symbol, something from like the Bible or something like that. I forget. It's in the affidavit, but it doesn't ever say clearly what it actually is.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a phrase, it was like a symbol of some sort, or like maybe
It was leaked. I know it was never confirmed, but it was leaked what it was, and I can't remember now. But yeah, I mean, branding yourself like, and also if people are old enough to remember Fatal Attraction, Glenn Close boiling the bunny, and I think she beat herself up, and then Melrose Place. Remember the redhead who was then on Desperate Housewives? She was really good at that type of character. But this was also very shortly after Gone Girl, the book and the movie came out. So she could have seen how much attention that got. And I mean, clearly she wanted attention, to be so calculating. Like, she put a piece of hair in her AirPods and wrapped them up on the ground. And it is scary calculated, right? To think of that somebody can be.
I am just surprised. I feel like, sometimes in these stories, someone, like, even if they committed a crime, right? And then they come back and they give like an interview and things are fine, and they don't act as like the grieving person or a victim of something. And so for her to like be so dedicated to the story, I found to be kind of fascinating, like putting on stuff at home so that her husband
that was the most interesting thing to me, because I believed her husband. He seemed authentic. Like, maybe he found out after the fact, but in the beginning he seemed like he had no clue what was going on. And then there's more to this, right? Like, wasn't there a ex-boyfriend involved? Because that could be motive.
It's a lot. Yeah. So let me just back up a little. So going to October 2017, the police announced that Shari Papini claimed that her two abductors were women, and then they ended up finding male DNA on her clothes. So already that was like something that started, I think, the unraveling of the story.
Well, first of all, women taking you, that's it's not unheard of.
Yeah,
but that's extremely rare. And it just like the list goes on.
Yeah. And then just like speaking about her husband, I agree with you. I think he believed it. And then I think somewhere down the line, something happened and he was like, oh no. But anyway, so as of March 3rd of this year, the police released a criminal complaint to charge Shari and arrested her last like 2 weeks ago for allegedly faking her own kidnapping and lying to federal agents. She was released from jail, and then she has charges of lying to federal agents about being kidnapped and defrauding the state victim compensation board of $30,000. A federal judge allowed Papini, now 39, to be released after her family posted a $120,000 bond, and then she must also undergo psychiatric treatment and surrender her passport as a condition of her release. Papini's abduction hoax cost the county, state and federal taxpayers, and crime victims donors more than $200,000. So this goes beyond like you faking a crime. It also is like financially, it was like a big hit. And
also taking law enforcement off of important cases where there are actual victims. Those cops had to work on that day and night, and probably wholeheartedly wanted to find this person and help this woman.
For years, this started in 2016. We're now in 2022 and she's just now being charged. They've been working on this for literally years. And then like how many other people that actually needed, assistance.
It gives you some compassion for cops that that when they go through this time and time again, or they're lied to on a daily basis, when, you know, it makes sense that they become jaded and they become less compassionate.
Yeah, no, I get it. So the complaint states that during the time of her quote disappearance, she was actually at her former boyfriend's house in Costa Mesa. He stated that he picked up Shari from this location and the location she went missing from, and took her back to his home per Shari's request. Then 3 weeks later, had a friend rent him a car so he could drop her back off in the place where she was found. So it's so crazy. So she gets, she states, and he states, or not she, he states in his interviews that there was nothing sexual that happened between them. They were just friends. He thought she was being abused because that's what she said, and she was trying to get away from her husband. I don't think they really were paying attention to the news, and maybe that was purposeful on her part. But he brought her back to his apartment or condo, whatever it was, and she picked which room she wanted to be in. And she basically like locked herself in there, and like she would not eat very much. He said like it was like purposely trying to lose weight. She had him go to Hobby Lobby to pick up the branding tool. I don't know what it was actually for. I mean,
oh my God, that's why it was biblical. That's because all they have is Jesus stuff. Like I'm always buying my paint, and then I'm like, oh God, it's like a whole like end cap of Jesus, you know? It's like that's fine and everything.
It's in the affidavit. I'd have to look it up, but it was something that they thought it could be this, but it wasn't really legible. It's so funny.
It's like probably Live, Laugh, Love, or oh my God, we have to find out what it was now.
I know. I'll have to look back through it.
That's funny. And I mean, Costa Mesa guys, not all, but some are not the brightest. But I mean, come on. You didn't catch any news flashes of her, or you didn't think it was weird that you had to go buy a Bible verse in the form of something that could brand, or that she wasn't
branded
eating.
her. He's the one that did it.
He did it?
Yes.
And he's saying he doesn't know
to do it. I know. I don't know. So far they haven't charged him with anything, but so it's just interesting. Like she put her, and then she also like, so things that she did in the real situation, she like brought in the details in her like abduction. So like, for example, when she was actually in the ex-boyfriend's room, she boarded up the windows. So then when she was telling her story, she was like, well, these two women threw me in a room with boarded up windows. And so she was using like actual details that, in my opinion, so if she thought, that was my thought. Like, so if you were in a lie detector, you're actually telling the truth, sort of. Like, it was very interesting how.
Wow. The lengths to which she thought of everything is
so like, there was also like this weird detail of like some sort of pole being in the closet. And then so when she was telling her story, she was like, I was handcuffed to this pole in the closet. And so then when she like it was very interesting how her story, you know, they were able to find the things in this room that like kind of pointed to her. I don't know. It was wild to read how she kind of manipulated the whole situation, allegedly.
What would happen if we put her and Jodi Arias in a room and just observed? It's like two scorpions. Which one's gonna hit first? Because they sound so similar, so calculated. Can you imagine the lengths to which you have to go to remember all this, to keep your story straight, and just also, to have the balls to go into an interview and lie to federal agents? I mean, you and I are nervous Nellies, but still.
She like reading the affidavit, it's literally 50 or 60 pages or something, and her stories are so detailed. And I find that when you're lying about something, I feel like people will stay away from the details, because then it's like hard to remember what you've said or whatever. She's so detailed in the whole thing. And I'm like, damn girl, like I was surprised, shocked, all the things. But the boyfriend or ex-boyfriend also said when he was bringing her back, this is so bad, she had a bag, and as he's driving, she's like locking herself up in chains. I'm like, you don't think this is weird? Like, God.
I mean, she's very good. So she could have just been like, I'm into really crazy things. Go get me a Hobby Lobby brand. And, you know,
Yeah.
Men
So
will look the other way when they're getting some interesting. Men love crazy.
I mean, but yeah, according to everybody, they didn't have any sort of sexual relationship, blah, blah, blah. But
Do you
I don't know.
believe that?
I don't know. Maybe she, like, I could see maybe she wasn't that interested into him, but she was using him. So like, she's probably like, I can't, I'm abused and I'm triggered and all these things. And so we can't kind of
And
thing.
he's
Maybe.
okay
Like,
having the crazy girl not eating, branding herself for no. I guess people have done dumber things. It's just very, very strange. I want to get to the bottom of that.
Yeah. So Shari was presented with all of the, information in 2020 to when she sat down law enforcement to remind her that lying to the law is a crime, and taking $30,000 from victims' compensation is also against the law. So she not only like didn't tell the truth or fess up, she like doubled down on her story. So she was presented with all of this in 2020, and she was like, no, this is real. This is what happened, and kind of just double downs on everything.
And the victims' compensation, just to be clear, that's something that's provided to victims. Like they get a certain amount of money if they've been victimized.
So I think the way that it worked, because it was itemized, so I think that they would have to say, we are going to spend this much money on therapy, and so then they would like maybe cut a check for each time. What I thought was kind of crazy about this whole thing, because it's in California also, so, and I forget the name of it, but that huge family of kids that was found in the house.
Oh, the turpines
yes.
or terpenes.
And so they've been having such a hard time getting access to these kinds of funds, but this bitch is just like, oh, I need new blinds. Oh, I need therapy. And they're literally $30,000 later, but then this poor kid can't get a fucking bike. Like,
because they have to use a social worker. They can't go get it themselves. You're so right. There's so much wrong. There's so much wrong with the bureaucracy. And I
was so mad, like reading that. I was like, oh my God, this poor kid can't get a bike, but this bitch can get blinds because she doesn't have reporters looking in her house. Like, I was so mad.
She also did other things, right? Like paid off a bunch of debt.
Yeah. So they both paid off their like credit cards, and like her and her husband. And then a lot of it was said to be for PTSD and therapy. I don't, again, I'm not really sure what they like. Yeah. So her arrest, so this is what happened. So police were surveilling her home, and she was taking her children to a music lessons, and they wanted to make sure that the children were like not in the immediate area. But so the second she like separated from them, the police told her there was an accident involving her car, and they wanted to talk to her. And then the second they said they were the FBI and they were arresting her, she said no, like screamed no, and then tried to run. Dummy. And then her lawyer like later argued like she thought that her children could have been in danger, so she was running to go protect them. She wasn't fleeing. So yeah, so she's again facing charges of making false statements to federal law enforcement and mail fraud, and the maximum prison sentence is 5 years for the first charge and 20 years for the second charge, and each charge carries a maximum financial penalty of $250,000, and she could also be required to pay restitution. And her in-person court date, so everything up to now has been Zooms, but she will be appearing in person April 29th to get this like going.
Oh, that'll be interesting because she loves attention.
There's so many like
show
details of this, and we don't have enough time, but I will try to link the affidavit on our website somewhere. So if you're interested in reading the whole thing, it's fascinating, I will tell you. So that's Shari Papini.
Very interesting
piece of work, that lady.
Okay, so switching gears, but staying in California. 2 months before George Floyd was killed by police officers while in custody saying, "I can't breathe," something similar happened in California, of all places. And I never heard anything about it. And Jenna said she hadn't heard about it either. And we follow this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So Edward Bronstein, 38 years old, was suspected of driving under the influence on March 31st, 2020. California Highway Patrol officers detained him, and he died in custody while police were restraining him to draw his blood. So in December 2020, Bronstein's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit, and they also want the LA County DA, George Gascon, to file criminal charges against the officers involved in the incident. It was only after the family filed this lawsuit that they learned that there's full body cam footage of this entire event, because of all things, they were recording it for training purposes.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
And the guy dies the time that so a federal judge ordered right away the footage should be released. It was. You could find it online. It's extremely disturbing. I started it. I turned it off. I couldn't watch it. Louis Carrillo is an attorney for the Bronstein family, and he told the LA Times, quote, "The state of California did not want us to release this video. Thank God the judge agreed with us, and that's why you can now see this video. It's horrible, but it's the only way his family can get justice." So in the video, Bronstein is told that there's a court order for a blood draw, which sounds strange anyway, and they're trying to handcuff him, and he's trying to ask questions. So he's already handcuffed. And he asks the officers why they need to draw blood, and they're not answering. They're struggling with him, and there's quite a few officers on him. But he, I do believe, was transient, and he did have drug issues. He had a family, but he had a difficult life. And so, I mean, who wouldn't get scared if somebody they're on top of you and they're saying, you need a blood draw? And if he is on meth, I've never been on meth, but I've watched a ton of shows of people on meth, and they're always paranoid and scared. And most officers know this and know how to react in these situations. So who knows, when you're on camera, you act differently. Maybe that had something to do with it. But so get this, according to the NBC News, the LA County Medical Examiner's Office ruled Bronstein's cause of death as acute methamphetamine intoxication during restraint by law enforcement. That was his cause of death, and the manner unknown. So they can't be charged. So obviously, Bronstein's family believes the police restraint is directly responsible for his death. And once officers began to restrain him, Bronstein repeatedly says, I'll do it willingly. I'll do it willingly. But they're still trying to jump on him. And finally, officers tell him to calm down. And they say it's too late to do the blood draw without the restraint. So they're telling him he has no recourse. And think of certain personalities. Like I think of my husband or you, like there's nothing you can do to get out of this. Like you're going to fight or you're going to freeze. And that's just like what your body does. And then you throw chemicals and drugs into the mix. Yeah. It was a recipe for disaster. In the video, Bronstein screams, "I can't breathe," which how many times have we heard that now? He says it several times. And then he just falls silent. And not one officer took action.
None of the officers, when they saw that he was.
The family attorney who watched the entire video said none of the officers took any action to pull the other officers off or to do anything, to pull them aside, nothing. And then finally they roll him over and he's dead. He's totally dead. They didn't try to give him CPR. There's like 10 minutes that goes by.
They didn't even try to resuscitate him.
The lackadaisical way in which they attempted to like do something, I don't know if it was shock that I was seeing on their faces or if they were just like, it seemed like they did not rush to help him. It seemed like he was like, what the family said is it looks like he was trash. And they said, we understand he had drug problems. We understand he was homeless, but that doesn't mean he's any less of a person. Yeah. And that's what it looked like, that's what the optics were. I don't know what the officer's experience was, and they haven't come out and said anything. But if you're just watching that video, it looks really bad. And, so I mean, there's so much corruption in California in general,
Oh,
like you just said.
I was just gonna
And
say,
then
did you wait,
the
on this
cops, yeah.
same subject? Did you get the article I sent you about all these
We've
LA
been, yeah, I've been
they're all
following
gang
it.
members? Like,
It's the weirdest thing to me because growing up, my dad used to say that, and I was like, "You're so crazy." Anyway, what we're referring to is, I think the LA Times or somebody did some sort of expose and found that some crazy high percentage of law enforcement officers in LA are in gangs and affiliated with gangs, and doing criminal things and probably letting certain things go. Who knows? It just feels like California is flooded with corruption. The Turpins not being able to get their money, and
we are
like,
slowly becoming the armpit of the United States.
well, it's just so sad. It's just, yeah. I mean, all of America is struggling, but to watch California fall so fast is upsetting. And we didn't even hear about this. And and so many Californians, I'm sure, think like, oh, that would never happen here. That's Minnesota, and of course it did happen. Rodney King, like, we know that police brutality feels like began in California, although it's just the footage began.
Right.
But it's upsetting, and I think it's important for people to realize that this is happening all across the country, and it's not all police officers, and it's not there. Maybe they needed more training, and I certainly don't believe that cops go out there and try to kill these LAPD guys that are in gangs. It might be otherwise. I don't know, but I don't think that I really believe that police officers want to protect and want to do the right thing, and certainly don't want to kill people. So they just need better training and more transparency.
Yeah. I think too, it's like, I almost think about it with like doctors. Like, I think everybody who wants to be a doctor goes into it because they want to help people, but then like somewhere along the line you become corrupt from maybe money from something, or hardened from the things you see, and it just changes you, and it's so sad. We need to give police more money, more training, more support. The thing with law enforcement that really like kills me too, kind of going off on a side note here, it's like there's no mental health support either. Like, if you were to be in law enforcement, and I know this because I have people in it, and they can't go and say like, oh, I want to speak to a therapist, or oh, can I get on like Xanax or any of that stuff, because you can do it and they'll let you have resources like the therapist and whatnot, but then it's like a black mark on your record, and you can't escape it, and you get penalized for it. And I just think that like if they had more support and all of these things without being punished for it, like we would be in a better place.
Yeah, because it's very much like military that come home that we don't help try to train them how to reprogram into regular life. It's
throw them back in and like hope for the best. And these poor guys and women, and
it's very similar for them. I mean, every single day they could be attacked, they could be killed. Like, I always think about that every time you walk up to a car and like something can happen to them. So to have that level of stress and anxiety and no outlet and no therapy, it's so wrong. They need a lot more resources. I mean, along with teachers and a lot of other people, but the answer is definitely not to give them less funding, for sure. No. I think that's wrong.
Yeah. Oh man. So staying in California.
My God, it is the new Florida. There's our title. California is the new Florida.
Okay. So kind of a vintage story, but with newer updates, which I thought was really interesting. So I had never heard of this story, but in 1994, a woman named Shari Huss was 39, and she was from Desert Hot Springs, California, and she was found fatally stabbed multiple times and bitten in the neck. And recently, the regional cold case team, which is made up of members of the DA's Bureau of Investigations, Riverside County Sheriff Coroner Department, and police, and the FBI, was able to match DNA using genetic genealogy and discovered the killer lived 12 miles away from where her home was at the time of the crime. Sharon, or it's a man, so I think I'm saying it wrong, but it's maybe Sharon Eugene Gadlin, 48, from Gardena. He was arrested on Friday and Friday. So this was 2 weeks ago, Friday, wow, and charged with first-degree murder after police received a warrant. Investigators obtained a saliva sample from this person on Valentine's Day and then sent the sample to the Department of Justice's lab, who confirmed his saliva and the blood from the scene of her murder. It's unclear at this time how this Gadlin person, who was 20 at the time of the crime, got into the home, if the pair knew each other, what the motive was. So I think that now that they know who it is, and maybe they'll be able to get more answers from the person or see what the connections are as time goes on. But they found it, and they're gonna face charges and all that. And the district attorney, Mike Hestron, said in the press release that, quote, "I hope Shari and her family will finally get the justice they deserve and have waited so long for." So I'm so
relieved that they used genealogy, because I was afraid you were going to say they used bite marks, because they just have proven that is like total BS science, and people have gone to jail based on bite marks.
What's his butt was like a main. Why am I forgetting his name?
Bundy.
Bundy. That's like Bundy. It's like bite marks. That's what they use like in the trial.
Ooh, anyway. And if somebody was biting, that can also be a sign of like serial killer type stuff. That's freaky.
Yeah, it seemed very that seems like personal. Like you're in, I don't know.
How old was she?
She was 39 and he was 20. So he's now 48. And I mean, I'm hoping that maybe the guilt of it all, they'll find more information. I'm keeping my finger on the pulse of this one, but this was kind of brand new information that's come up, and nothing's really been released since. But
wow,
person's been arrested, and that's the good news.
All right, heading over to Minnesota. We finally left California, everybody. But this is equally upsetting. I mean, every story we do is upsetting, but this is wild. So a Minnesota mother of 3 was stabbed and set on fire at her workplace, and police say that her ex-boyfriend is responsible for her death. So 44-year-old Kelli Raining Goodemont was at her job as a receiving specialist at a warehouse on Tuesday when her ex-boyfriend, Patrick Morris Simmons, stabbed her multiple times and set her on fire. One of Kelli's coworkers told authorities that he witnessed 37-year-old Patrick punch and stab Kelli as she lay on the floor. Patrick allegedly poured accelerant on her and lit her on fire. Another coworker saw the blaze and put out the flames immediately with a fire extinguisher. Patrick allegedly fled the scene and went home, where he was later arrested. According to an arrest affidavit, Patrick told investigators that he believed Kelli, quote, was a witch, and he did this to stand up for babies being killed and sacrificed with witchcraft. Sound familiar, Jenna? Like a Santa Barbara dad? Yeah, I mean, it's so
QAnon
similar.
Follower, like Jesus. I mean, the fire is so brutal. Like, I don't understand how people go to these like extremes when they think that they're like, same with Matthew Coleman, like they think that they are protecting the world or their kids or that, so you use a hacksaw, an axe, and they're not fire. Like, I don't understand.
Delusional. They're totally delusional, and I don't know anything about religion, but it seems like a lot of times it can be tied into religion, which has a lot of fire and like burning to purify. And
yeah,
I don't know if that has something to do with it, but this is clearly not somebody that's religious or of sound mind. Like, this is somebody who had a psychotic break or has been psychotic and just somehow gone under the radar. It doesn't sound like it, though. The affidavit also states the police allegedly asked him where he got the gas. And then Patrick allegedly replied, "I got the gasoline at my house. So yeah, it's premeditated." So genius, really smart. I mean, I love it when they do that, but I mean,
they just smart bury themselves.
He also said he tried to burn his house down because, quote, there was paranormal activity going on there. People magazine confirms that Simmons has been charged with second-degree intentional murder. And devastatingly, according to online court records, there was a restraining order in place that she got last year, preventing him from being near her. They had an on-again, off-again relationship for nearly a decade, according to WCCO. But still, I mean, she did what she thought would protect her. And then, I mean, I think so much about the trauma that these employees went through. They worked with her, they saw her. And I would, if anybody thinks like, why didn't they do anything? He had knives and gasoline and was saying God knows what. I'm sure they were frozen in fear and thinking that they were next. But those people, I mean, talk about needing therapy. I can't imagine what they are going through.
Not the same, but kind of the same. Was in a situation where employees, we all worked together and witnessed something horrendous, and just watching the fallout from it, and just watching the fallout that it happens with not obviously the person. Okay, someone had died and we all kind of witnessed it and the situation, and people that were like right next to the person when it happened. I mean, they were traumatized for years and had so much guilt and like, I could have done that, I should have, could have, would have. And there's so, I mean, it's such a ripple effect of like not only the victim and their family, but like you say, the people around, and it sticks with you for the rest of your life. Like it doesn't go away. And it's crazy.
At my old job, prior to me working there, our office was right where, do you remember in Santa Monica when a man drove through the farmer's market? It happened like in the 2000s. He was confused by the gas pedal and the brake. He was elderly and he pressed the gas and went 70 miles an hour through a farmer's market and killed a lot of people. But it was right next to my office. So the people I worked with saw it and they ran out right away and immediately tried to save people that ended up dying. And my boss was amazing and provided tons and tons of therapy. And when I started working there, it was years later, but they couldn't even speak about it. I mean, they would get choked up. They still had intense PTSD and survivor guilt and that sort of stuff. So not only is this a horrible story all around, but yeah, the amount of people that are affected by domestic violence, by violence of any kind, is so vast. You know, it's not just the people immediately involved, you know, because they had she had 3 children. I don't know if they were with him, but now they have no mother.
Yeah, no, but it's like always the kids. It's like with like Maya Malete. I mean, so many things, but like Maya Malete, for example, you know, the father allegedly kills the mom and then he's in jail. So good job. You've just taken both parents from your children. Like, you idiots.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate. Okay, I was gonna say move on to something better, but nothing, it just keeps getting worse.
Okay, switching gears, heading over to New York City now. This is such a disturbing story, and I feel like we're hearing about this more and more, and I don't know if it has its fallout from the pandemic, but this woman, 26-year-old Lauren Pazienza, is charged with pushing an elderly woman in the street unprovoked, and she ended up dying of her injuries. It's a awful story, but it's very strange. It's still developing as of this recording. She's just been arrested, but this girl was 26 years old, upper class. Some have called her a socialite, but I think that might be a little bit of a stretch. She went to the Fashion Institute and she was engaged. She grew up in kind of an upper class area in Long Island, and her dad, Daniel, runs a super successful business in Holtzville, which This is the claim to fame. It had one time been ranked the #1 cesspool company in Suffolk County for service and price. So isn't that lovely?
He actually probably makes a shit ton of money though. No pun intended.
Tons of money. And I can't help but notice an Italian last name, but anyway, we'll skip that. So she is a former events coordinator for a very high-end furniture company. So comes from,
she's privileged. She's
privileged.
Not someone that's living on like a homeless person with mental illness issues,
No.
like talking to themselves. She's from a good background.
Yeah.
Seems that she's got her shit together until she doesn't. Like,
she's been seen around town. She's attending swanky parties. She's at tons of art openings. But her neighbors at her upscale Astoria condo where she lives with her fiance were not big fans. Law enforcement sources say she was a known nuisance at the Shore Towers building and had previously called the cops on multiple neighbors, according to the New York Post. One neighbor said, "I felt horrible about the situation, but I wasn't surprised." And so Lauren has been confined to a Rikers Island jail cell since Tuesday night in connection with manslaughter and assault charges for the murder of 87-year-old Barbara Goosterns in a push and fall death. It was on March 10th, and she was just walking on the sidewalk. Elderly 87-year-old woman. She's within like feet of her building. And Lauren crosses the street, comes up to her, calls her a bitch, and pushes her as hard as she can. She falls back, hits her head, and she couldn't move. She had to like shimmy into or close to a building, and a doorman saw and immediately ran out and grabbed her. And I think it was already pretty late. She was bleeding a lot from her head, and she was able to explain what had happened and give a description of the woman, and then she blacked out. So they took her to the hospital, and her family was able to fly in from all over, and they all held her hand, and she ended up passing away 4 days later from her injuries. She had said to the doorman before she passed out, she was hit as hard as she's ever been hit in her life. An 87-year-old woman. And
let me ask you, what's her ethnicity, the woman that died?
She looks white. Her name's Barbara Goostern.
Because this just reminds me of, I was wondering only because we've heard, so I don't know if anybody's paying attention, there's been so many kind of similar things, but it's been attacks on more of like
Asian American
culture. Yeah. And so I was curious if this was like anything of the sort, but it doesn't sound like it. Like she just, that is the strangest story I've ever heard. Like you just randomly walk up to some old lady and push her and call her a bitch. Like
it gets stranger. So they know from closed circuit TV that Lauren waited around the corner and watched as the woman was laying there, as the ambulance came to take her away. So I found that very odd. And then she went home. Weird. And she's getting married in June. And so she has like wedding websites and obviously social media. She wiped herself from the internet right away, took everything down, and then went to visit her wealthy parents in Long Island. And they had pictures of her, though, really good pictures of her from the subway, because they didn't know who she was initially. And so those were posted everywhere and it was on the news. So her parents knew it was a matter of time. I'm pretty sure they hired her an attorney right away.
Yeah.
But she did end up turning herself in. And like I said, she's at Rikers Island being charged with manslaughter. Is that what I said?
Only imagine they're going to come out with a mental illness, like something, because something's going on there. That is not, someone just doesn't walk down the street and like kill someone. Like,
yeah. So it's just to be clear, it's manslaughter and assault charges, but people are coming out of the woodwork, and people are coming out from her childhood and saying that she was like a huge bully in school and she was awful to people. Some people have said she had like a crazy look in her eye, which this could be. I mean, it could be a bipolar episode. It could be a psychotic break. She's getting married, like maybe something could trigger something
her,
crazy
yeah.
like this. But we're hearing about this so often. And you're right, in California, a lot of it and across the country was
in New York
people
too,
attacking Asian Americans,
yes, it's
which
disgusting.
is disgusting.
Like, I just don't understand what the thought process is there. Like, oh, if I kill this one person, it changes anything. Like, it boggles
weird that,
my mind.
And it's usually people that don't have a history of doing things like this. And so they consider it a thrill kill. So they get the thrill out of killing them. And as we have all of this new technology, like the genealogy, and we're finding these people who murdered a person and then never did anything else, psychologists and behavioralists are starting to study it and realize that there's not just serial killers. There's actually a lot more than you would like to know of people who have done this and just gotten away with it and just never done anything else. Like, it's just a one-time thing. I just listened to a podcast on it and I thought, well, of course, right? There's so many cases where you just can't find it, but that is so frightening.
Well, it's terrifying to think, and I wonder what it is. Is it like they just had the urge and like got it out of their system and never did again, or it was an accident and they just like repented the rest of their life? Like,
that's why they're studying it.
Curious about like what they're gonna find with this, the what's happening. That is, oh my god, it's scary. It's very scary.
It'll be interesting,
but it makes a little bit more sense in this case. If she has a history of being an asshole, then like it's not that surprising. But it's just like, why an elderly lady of all things? Like, I had to have triggered someone she didn't like or something about them she didn't like. I don't know. I feel like it could have been something so dumb as like she looked at her the wrong way and she was like, bitch. Like, you just never know. People like that are just.
And I think people also choose homeless people or elderly people because they're vulnerable. People don't think that they matter as much. Yeah, I don't know. It's so weird. I trust you and me. I'm following it and I will keep you posted.
It's such a strange story. Not the same, but kind of the same, just because talking about like mental illness and stuff. I obviously think Kanye's got mental stuff going on, because I don't think he's acting rationally, but he's never acted rationally. And that's,
he's openly said he's bipolar.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the reason I've never really liked him, is because I think he's just always been very reactive and like just rude. But I'm curious your thoughts about this whole Grammy situation. Do you know what I'm talking about? They've like kicked him out of the Grammys because of, and Instagram because of his behavior.
Yeah, they kicked him off Instagram for 24 hours for threatening behavior. I see no problem with that. Well, I don't know. It's such a slippery slope to no, I take it back. When it comes to free speech, even if it's awful free speech, we have to have it. It's such a fine line. I don't know enough about it with the harassing and I've never been involved in domestic violence or anything like that. And so many people have come forward that know so much, like Trevor Noah, because his dad, she survived, right?
I don't know. I know that she was shot.
I think she
did. I don't remember if she survived it or not, but so it's like something close to him, and he's from South Africa.
And then Charlize Theron is from South Africa, and her mom killed her father out of self-defense. So I don't know enough about it. It's such a weird thing with the social media. But then the Grammys, I mean, I can't stand the Grammys anyway with the way that
I don't think it's an actual punishment, because I don't know everything about Kanye, but I do know he peed on his Grammy. So like, he's probably like, okay, cool, bye. Like,
oh yeah, I'm sure he doesn't. I'm sure he loves it. I mean, anything that gives him press. But and it'll be interesting because he'll do something that night. He'll do something that night to bring attention away, which is genius.
The thing that was kind of shocking to me, so I follow two really fantastic Instagrams that I'm obsessed with. So I've talked about one. So House and Habit, she's fantastic. She's a local California girl, and she is like unofficial, but she's journalist-ish. Like she writes all these like newsletters and updates, and she follows the Lou Taylor stuff, the Britney stuff, and Kanye and all that stuff. She is very much, you got to follow her because you and her have the same line of thinking with Kanye and stuff. So I think it's really interesting that she gives another viewpoint to it. Cause I think, you know, for people like me who's never been a fan and like don't pay attention to the details of his life, like we might have a different reaction to some of the stuff. But the other one that I really like, it's called let me make sure I get it right. Where'd it go? I've written down somewhere. The Surprise Witness. I really like her. She's a lawyer, I believe, and she does a really good job of covering these things also. But I think it was her or House, one of the two had brought up a really interesting fact that like he's getting kicked off Instagram for saying these things, but like someone like Chrissy Teigen, who literally threatened to like 17-year-olds to go kill themselves. They telling them they should go commit suicide and like bullying teenagers. Nothing ever happened to her. Nothing happened to her.
Nope. And she's like, back. She's got her buccal fat fixed and she's a new person.
I stopped following, not that it matters, but like I stopped following her as soon as that stuff came out. I was disgusted by it all.
I've never
and
liked
the fact
her.
that like nothing ever came from that is like, it's like you have to either be fair across the board and do the same thing or don't do it at all. It's like, and people are getting censored left and right for like the craziest things, which I find is beyond. But and I was just curious your thoughts because I know that I haven't seen him obviously on social or anything because everybody's reacting. But
yeah. Did you hear what Trevor Noah said to Kanye? Oh, it was really sweet. I think you would like it. He's just saying like, I'm a big fan and I've always loved you. And I'm not coming down on you. I just want this to be better. And it just was really sweet. And I think the only way you can get through to somebody like that, because he's fighting everyone all the time. So, and nobody's ever backing him up, at least on camera. I know tons of people love him and support him, but they never will do it on camera. So, anyway, I love Kanye.
I think that's how you have to handle some of these situations. You can't fight fire with fire. Like you have to, you know, you gotta be some sort of like love and support for someone to maybe let them put their defenses down and like be, I don't know. It's sad,
heartbreaking watching his documentary. I know you don't watch it, but he's just so talented and he's so sweet and he comes from a good background of intelligent parents and he's in this rap world where, you know, Jay-Z, like these guys are drug dealers, like that's where they come from, that's how they made money, but he's from an educated place. He is mentally ill clearly, and that's why he's such a good artist, because you see him go manic and then he comes up with these beats, and all of these prolific artists are like, oh my God, when he's so young. So he's different than what people think of in the rap world. And it just makes me sad that he's become a target because I don't know. I love Kanye.
I know. I think it's hard. I think some people are able to separate and some people aren't. And it's hard because his loudness is like taking over his artistry and people are like, I can't.
I just have such a soft spot for him because he lost his mom the same age I did. And it totally broke him and it totally broke me. And I get it. And it's no excuse for some of the things he's done, of course, but he's also an artist. He's also doing things for, a reaction. But anyway, we can agree to disagree.
No, I mean, I have empathy for what he's going through 100%. And I just find the like social media stuff and the Grammys.
Oh,
I find
obnoxious.
It to be an interesting kind of like, no, I'm saying I just find it interesting what they choose, who they choose to punish, and who they choose not to punish. It's like, just be fair and punish all the assholes when they're being assholes, maybe, or whatever.
Yeah, it seems like color of skin still matters when it comes to that.
Yeah. Anyway,
sadly.
Okay. What is next?
Moving on to something very interesting that it's kind of just happening. So I don't have tons of information, but so there are two apparently healthy and happy American sisters who died of assisted suicide in Switzerland. And apparently now it's coming out that maybe a third person helped them because somebody was text messaging from their phones to their brother who's here in the States. He's very confused. So one of the women, Lila Ammouri, was a 54-year-old palliative care doctor, and her sister, Susan Frazier, was a 49-year-old nurse. They traveled to Basel, Switzerland on February 3rd from their home in Phoenix, Arizona, and the US consulate confirmed their deaths on February 18th, so within 2 weeks. The city is home to Pegasus, not Pegasus, Pegasus, and it's an assisted suicide facility that helps patients who aren't terminally ill to take their own lives for an $11,000 fee, according to the Daily Mail. So we've all heard of these places. They have right to die laws in Washington or Oregon. I forget where else, but prior to that, people would go to Switzerland because they've always had this. But it was always for people that were terminally ill or their quality of life was just unbearable. And this place, you didn't necessarily have to do that. However, it accepts applications from patients all over the world, but it insists that you, if you have depression, you have to go through intense counseling services before you can make this sort of choice. I don't know exactly what that entails, but both of these women were allowed to do this, and they have one brother, and he says, as far as I know, they were totally healthy and nothing was wrong with them. So it's very strange.
My thought is, you said they were both in like healthcare.
Yeah.
I wonder if they had just had enough after the last 2 years. And
yeah, I mean, if
they must have seen.
If some people don't know, I didn't. Palliative care doctors help at the very end, like when my mom was dying. They come in to just manage the extreme pain of death, and that's basically all that they do. So I can't imagine only seeing people that you know are going to die. I mean, yes, you're providing comfort to them, but yeah, you're right. Like with COVID, you can't provide comfort at the end. They can't breathe, they're drowning. So yeah, and her sister being a nurse, you're right. They could have just been, or they found something out. I don't know. I'm sure conspiracy theories will go rampant on this one.
It's just interesting, but it's like the time frame seems why. So it sounds like there's like the intake would take a while to make sure that the bases are covered, unless they just said, listen, we're paying extra. Like, I want to know the details. Like, did they pay extra to just be like, get us in here? We want to do this. This is what we've been fucking dealing with. Like, I don't want to be here anymore.
And they had set it up. So they had set appointments prior. Yeah. I don't know how far back, to do that sort of intake, but yeah, you're right. They got there on the 3rd and they were gone by the 18th. That is really fast. So I just find this very interesting. And especially since a third party was text messaging after they had passed to the brother, that seems very strange. Maybe it's something that they do. I don't know.
I'll say maybe the facility, they left like instructions for them to contact the brother so that they knew where they were or something.
This person was pretending to be them from what the brother says.
I didn't get that part.
So as stuff comes out, I will keep you posted. What do you think about that though, Jenna? If you're not terminally ill, but your quality of life is so bad, you can't handle it.
Listen, like if your quality of life in some way, like it's health or like a physical thing, like I get, I don't know. I feel like the depression stuff is what makes me nervous, because if there's a way to overcome that, then like I would hope that, but at the same time, who am I to tell you like how to live? I'm very conflicted about it. Like I'm like, you do you, but at the same time, maybe because I'm a parent, like I don't want my children later in life necessarily having access just to go end it all on a what would seem like a whim. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Yeah. But then if there's a will, there's a way. I'm very conflicted on how I feel about it. Like,
yeah, I feel the same. We would need more information to see like what they do, what they expect you to do in terms of counseling, if you have to like inform anybody. That's why I do think it's strange that two sisters did it and they didn't even tell their brother, or that just seems like maybe they did, who knows, maybe they did write him a letter or something and more information will come out, but the brother is concerned and he's looking into it.
As he should. I mean,
yeah,
it's very strange, but also like, I kind of look at this facility up just for information, not for me, but I mean, just like,
no, seriously, go to the
purposes.
website. It's interesting. Pegasus SOS.
I don't know what that stands for.
Oh, SOS. Pegasus is a horse with wings.
Yeah.
And then SOS. So Pegasus like, SOS, like I save our souls is what that means. That's probably what it is.
Oh man.
See, I know it is sad. There was a totally off topic. When I used to give grants to Human Social Services, there was this elderly home that we would fund, and it was called Upward Bound. Upward Bound. Can you imagine walking every day into your house that says you're about to go?
Die.
Oh my God. It made me so sad.
You can't even like pretend it's not happening. You're like, Upward Bound, here I come.
Don't forget, it's called Upward Bound, Larry. It's been a little too long for you. Okay, anyway.
Oh no. Okay.
Hit us with some updates, Jenna. There's nothing you love more than Ghislaine.
Well, okay, yes, Ghislaine. So this is so let me give you some reminders here. So this is about the juror Scotty. So all of this came out about a week or so ago about his trial, and he told other jurors about his abuse because they were skeptical of the accounts given by some of the victims when it came to the details. So that's the only reason he says he came forward, because he wanted to help them understand the victim's point of view. His response was, quote, "I know what happened when I was sexually abused. I remember the color of the carpet, the walls. Some of it can be replayed like a video, but I can't remember all the details or some things that run together." So this is what he said he told the other jurors. So while Nathan, who is the judge, denied Maxwell's initial request for a retrial and to question the other jurors, she did agree to question Scotty at this special hearing that happened, and says, quote, "To be clear, the potential impropriety is not that someone with a history of sexual abuse may have served on the jury. Rather, it is the potential failure to respond truthfully to questions during the jury selection process that asks for the material information so that any potential bias could be explored." So then we find out he lied, right? And so this leads up to the latest update. So the last podcast we had talked about how the juror was going to invoke his fifth, and he would be granted immunity from prosecution if he answered the questions during the hearing. So he decided to not plead the fifth and actually answer the questions. So the judge on March 8th was able to ask juror 50 about these indiscrepancies, and it says Scotty addressed question 25, which asked whether he had ever been the victim of a crime. He answered no. And it says, quote, "Looking back at it now, it's an incorrect answer," the juror said. He said that at the time he imagined the question referred to being robbed or mugged. "I wasn't thinking about my sexual abuse." I think this is a very lawyery prepped answer, because he had already kind of, I feel like, answered this in interviews and whatnot.
Yeah. And let's remember, when you fill out a questionnaire, it clearly said, "Have you been sexually abused?" And he said no. Yeah. And then he thought it pertinent to bring it up to jurors. It seems, again, like it was being done on purpose.
Yeah. So he said he was distracted and unfocused when he filled out the questionnaire, and he described the misstatement as one of the biggest mistakes of his life. Yet he maintained that his own abuse did not shape his views and did not influence his approach as a juror in the trial, and denied tailoring his answers to get a spot on the jury. Quote, "I did not hope to be on this jury." I think that's not true. The New York Times interviewed a second, this is where it gets really interesting. The New York Times interviewed a second juror who said they'd also experienced childhood sexual abuse, but didn't say so on the questionnaire. Quote, this juror who requested anonymity said that they too had discussed the experience during deliberations and that the revelation had appeared to help shape the jury's discussions, end quote. This is coming from the New York Times. To date, this juror has not publicly revealed their identity, and Miss Maxwell does not know who it is. So it has now been 10 days since this hearing and still nothing. I kind of hope that they're also like maybe looking at to see who his other juror is, but I think if a second person comes out, 100% it's a mistrial. Like,
something's got to be done with these questionnaires. I mean, I do think it's possible that maybe some people get on these juries and they hear intense testimony. It could bring something back.
Yeah. But then you can also have a note sent to the judge and say that, and then that's why there's extra jurors to then fill in your space. You know, you have to be. The problem is you can't
feel like it's fixed.
Yeah, I feel like, and take Maxwell, this specific case, but you can't let these things go because this is what we rely on as like justice and like a form. You cannot let the system break. Like you have. But
I can also understand why people don't want to answer that, because a lot of people that has happened, but they've never told anybody.
Yeah.
Or they literally can black it out and then remember later on.
But you also have to understand too, when you're filling out a juror thing, like I'm sure you have too. Yeah. There's a place where it says if you need to be excused and what's the reason. You could say, I have had sexual trauma. It's not going to be released anywhere, but you can say I've had these experiences. I don't want to be. Yeah, maybe.
People are paranoid, or you know what I mean? Like there needs to be something where it's like, this is completely anonymous. Yeah. Like that doesn't even have your name on it, which I don't feel like they had your name on it anyway.
No, it's juror numbers. It's not like a name. It is interesting, but it's still ongoing. And the craziest thing to me too, it's like, while this is going on, still her little, like, all the names that are actually involved in this bigger thing, no one's being held accountable. Like no one's being brought out. No one's being talked about. There's all these dirt bags that abused women for years and nothing. Hello, what is happening? I know what's happening, but it's ridiculous.
It's gross.
And then lastly, just moving on, because I know we're almost done here. I thought this was crazy because I hadn't heard anything about this case in a very long time. Adnan Syed, who was the podcast Serial was based on his case. If for some reason you haven't listened to it, it's fantastic.
No, I have.
To it. Not you. I'm saying in general, if people have. I'm not talking to you.
I think it's second season too, because the first season was the guy that went AWOL. It's one of the seasons of Serial. I don't know if it's the first.
It's really, really good. So, literally, like a couple days ago, a Baltimore County Circuit judge ordered a new DNA testing in the case of Adnan Syed, whose murder conviction was a subject of the season of Serial. Judge Melissa Finn on Monday ordered the Baltimore Police Department to send evidence in the case to Forensic Analytical Crime Lab in California within 15 days, according to the court documents. Obviously, nothing's come out yet, but he's getting new DNA testing happening in his case.
That's big news. That's exciting, because the last time that his appeal was rejected, it just seemed like it was over and he had lost all of his hope. And the story kills me. I'm still conflicted though. I still don't know what happened. I still don't know.
I am too.
All right. What are we watching?
I have a lot.
Well, I really loved Evan Rachel Wood's documentary. It's on HBO Max. It's called Phoenix Rising. Yeah, it's just 2 episodes. I actually watched it on the plane when we came back from California. And she just talks about her experience with Marilyn Manson. His real name is Brian Warner. And she's extremely brave and open. And a lot of survivors of his abuse speak in the documentary. And I just really hope that he serves some time, because he's done some disgusting things and gotten away with it for too long. And I never was like, oh, it's Marilyn Manson's fault for Columbine. And I bought his book. I was totally a fan, but I didn't know about the torture and all of this stuff. I mean, I started to figure it out once he was with Evan Rachel Wood in his late 30s and she was like a teenager. I was like sick. Something's wrong with him. But what was done to her is awful. And she's lived in such fear that he was going to come back and get her. Because I've always wondered, where is she? I loved her as a child actress. She was in some of my favorite shows. And I just hope that this like lifts something off of her shoulders and she can feel a little bit more comfortable and safe.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched it yet, but I've been hearing about it and I've been wanting to watch it. I didn't realize it was out yet, so I'm gonna watch. But also I heard in the news recently too, now she's fighting to ban like the music video that she says that she was essentially raped in. Yeah. And it's like, how is that allowed to be out there? Like, I mean, I guess
it's not, it's totally illegal, but all of those people were on set and nobody did anything to help her. It's really sad. It's really sad what celebrities get away with, as we've seen with R. Kelly and Cosby, and you know, but it's dying. I feel like, I don't know if it's completely going away, but just the stuff that has come out and the people that have been taken down, it's really promising.
I think it won't be like, if I don't feel like in today's age you're going to have a situation with like Cosby who's going to be able to do the same thing over and over for decades. Like I think the day and age of continuously like abusing people is done, because you're going to think of that
sentence that you just said. If we said that prior to the pandemic, you wouldn't be able to say that. Like the pandemic has been awful, but it's also really lifted the veil and changed our world entirely, some for the bad, but some for really good.
And it's so crazy, as I don't know if people remember, but I remember when we were kind of in the beginning of it, you had said astrology wise, like that's what was going to be happening. You're going to see the veil lifted on all kinds of things and truths coming out. And I just find that to be freaking mind blowing.
I know
astrology tells us it's so.
It just doesn't make how can you not believe in it if my whole life I've been studying it, and my whole life I have known that in December 2020, the entire world was going to shift. And I used to think that's impossible. Like that's not. And then when this happened, I was like, it's totally happened. And it's something so that nobody could have ever comprehended. You know, it's so real, crazy. Everybody. It's real. Okay, Jenna, what are you watching?
Okay, so this is gonna sound like I'm a total nerd, first of all, but I feel like I grew up watching Law and Order, and so I've never stopped watching like SVU, and now there's another spinoff, but the original Law and Order is back. So if you were like me and you were a fan, it's very much the same kind of setup, and it's, for me, it's like super nostalgic to watch. I love it. And it's like one of the same guys is in it still, even though he's like so old.
That's cool.
I love it. And so I was so excited to see it come back. I've never stopped watching SVU. I'm a huge fan. So that was exciting to see come back. And then I'm also obsessed with The Dropout. It's not going to be for everybody. It's a little slow, and it's very science driven and like the details of everything that happened, but I find it to be fascinating. Fascinating.
Because you do see a side that you didn't see before, like whether or not she really believed in it, or that's the side that I really enjoy. It is a lot longer than it should have been. I think it could have been a lot shorter.
It's not even done yet. It's still ongoing.
That's what I mean. Like they really could have wrapped it up, but they did have to explain it. And I mean, she's such an amazing actress. She's can do anything.
So good. And like I would suggest, if you don't know the story, like maybe go watch an interview or two of the actual Elizabeth Holmes before you go watch it, so you understand kind of like the Anna Delvey of it all. Like the accents are on purpose and the voicing is on purpose.
Isn't it funny? Like I've known of Anna Delvey since I was working in the art world, and then you and I got obsessed with it when it all happened, and now everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. Like I can't believe that accent. Every time I'm like, no, that's her accent. That's exactly what she sounds. You know?
And same thing with this, like the deep voice, like the one drop.
And she practices it right in the mirror.
Yeah. There's like a moment where she's sitting there like looking at herself, and she's like repeating the same thing, and the voice change. It's so interesting.
That's what those people do. That's the good side of it, where you see how that person becomes who they are.
Oh my God. And lastly, it's not that good, but I think it's worth a watch if you have any interest of it. I watched the WeWork documentary on Hulu.
Uh-huh.
I feel like there could have been a little bit more.
Yeah.
Personally, I feel like they kind of ended it without explaining some things, or maybe I just missed some stuff, which is totally possible. But I liked that they put a lot of emphasis on the main, I forget his name right now, but the Israeli guy that co-founded the whole thing. I thought that was really interesting and to know about him. But I feel like there could have been a little bit more to the story. Did you see it?
Yeah, and I felt that way about almost all of the Hulu documentaries I've watched. They almost go there, and then it's like, and credits, and you're like, wait, what? It's
and then Pam and Tommy is going to go on forever with the most I can't even watch it. But yet the things that are important, and like I actually want to know, it's like, or it's done. I was like, wait, what? So I mean, it's interesting, but there needs to be more there.
Yeah.
But
there's one more. There's a great podcast there's a new season. It's called Unraveled. If you don't know, it's Billy Jensen and Alexis Linkletter, and they're covering like a small town murder. I just listened to the first episode last night, and it was so good. So definitely,
the last one was really good too. The last season was real good.
I love that podcast. They're great.
There's only one season that I didn't listen to because it's like not my type of vibe. It was like tech crime kind of stuff. But the rest is I like their dynamic. I like them a lot.
Yeah.
So that's it.
That's it, everybody.
Just depress you today with all the bad news in the world. No, just kidding. If you want to connect with us, you can follow us on social medias at Murder in Retrograde, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Although, sorry, I've been dropping the ball a little bit on the social media side. I go through waves, but there's information there. And website is murderinretrograde.com, so you can connect with us there also.
So until next time, be safe
and trust your gut. See you later.
Adios.